Do you feel it, don't you? The tension in your chest that appears out of nowhere, the racing mind, as if it's trying to escape from something you can't even name. The constant fear that something will go wrong, even when everything is fine. And worse, no one around you really understands what's going on inside you. You smile, say that everything is okay, but inside, it's as if you're screaming and no one hears. Now stop for a second. What if I told you that this anxiety that consumes you every day is not the real problem? What if it's just a symptom of something much deeper trying to emerge from your psyche? Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in depth psychology, believed that anxiety was not a failure, a dysfunction, or a simple chemical issue. For him, anxiety was a call from the soul, a sign that parts of you have been neglected, suffocated, or denied for so long that they are now trying to resurface with full force. Have you ever wondered why you feel so much anxiety for no apparent reason? Have you ever asked yourself why? Even when trying to control your thoughts, meditate. Trying to control your thoughts, meditate, breathe deeply, or follow shallow advice like, think positive, the feeling remains, like an invisible presence chasing you. Perhaps it's because you're trying to kill the messenger without listening to the message. Jung said that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. In other words, anxiety arises when you flee from something that needs to be faced. An old pain, an uncomfortable truth, a part of you that you locked in the basement of your mind, thinking you would never have to confront it again. But the psyche has a different plan, and anxiety is the alarm. This video is not a shallow self-help manual. I'm not here to tell you that everything will be okay, because it might not be if you keep ignoring what your soul is trying to say. This video is a mirror, and if you have the courage to look into it until the end, you might find something that no one has ever shown you, the true meaning of your anxiety, and how it can transform from enemy to guide. So, the choice is yours. Will you continue to run away, or will you look into the eyes of what haunts you? The anxiety you feel is not random. It didn't come out of nowhere. And definitely it is not just a chemical imbalance as you have been conditioned to believe. For Jung, psychological symptoms are symbolic expressions of something happening deep within the psyche, and anxiety in particular is a sign that you are at war with yourself. But it is not a conscious war. It is an underground, archetypal conflict between the forces that shape who you are and who you pretend to be. Jung believed that within every human being there are universal archetypes, primordial images that inhabit the collective unconscious. They are not just mythological figures or beautiful symbols. They are living forces that shape your thoughts, emotions, decisions, and deepest fears. When these archetypes come into conflict, you feel it. When you deny one of them, when you reject the shadow, the self, or the call of the inner hero, your psyche does not remain silent. It screams. And the most common form of that scream is anxiety. Anxiety is not caused by overthinking, it is caused by disconnection, when the ego, the part of you that identifies with the social mask, with routine, with control, loses contact with the unconscious, an internal crack is born. You feel insecure, even without reason. You feel fear of the future, even when everything is relatively fine. You feel an emptiness that nothing fills, neither success, nor relationships, nor distractions. Why does this happen? Because the unconscious is trying to restore balance. It is trying to get your attention. When you live only to meet external expectations, to maintain an image, to follow a script that you didn't even write, you are denying your soul. And the rejected soul manifests first as discomfort, then as anxiety. And if you continue to ignore it as collapse, Jung didn't see anxiety as an enemy. He saw it as a symbolic messenger bearer of a call for individuation, the process of becoming what you truly are. But it is necessary to recognize that anxiety carries a message, a metaphor, a symbol. Something within you is dying, so that another part can be born. But the ego fears this transformation and fights against it. This is the true battlefield. Do you feel like you are losing control? Perhaps it's because you never truly had control, only the illusion of it. What anxiety is trying to show you is that there is an abyss between who you are and who you are being. And as long as that abyss is not faced, the emptiness will only grow. But what exactly is in that abyss? What is being denied, repressed, forgotten? In the next section, we will go even deeper to the darkest point of your psyche to understand the relationship between anxiety and the shadow. And perhaps by facing it, you will understand why your anxiety never wanted to destroy you, but rather to awaken you. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You were educated to be acceptable. From an early age, you were taught that certain emotions were ugly, that certain thoughts were shameful, that certain impulses needed to be suppressed. You learned to smile when you wanted to scream, to be kind when you felt anger, to pretend to be secure when you were falling apart. Over time, you shaped a persona, a social mask, and buried everything that didn't fit into it. But here's the truth. No one told you. Everything you buried is still alive. Jung called this forgotten side of you the shadow. The shadow is everything you don't want to be but are. Everything you don't want to feel but feel. It's your fear disguised as anger. Your anger disguised as silence. Your insecurity masked as control. And when you try to live only as what is acceptable, you become a slave to that shadow. And it manifests in the only way it can, through anxiety. Anxiety in this context is like an alarm triggered by the rejected part of you. It's the shadow knocking on the door of your consciousness, demanding to be seen, and the more you ignore it, the louder it screams. You feel palpitations, sweating, insomnia, obsessive thoughts. But you don't understand why. Because you're looking at the symptoms, not the root. And the root is in the unconscious, where the shadow resides, repressed, suffocated, hungry for recognition. Have you ever wondered why you have disproportionate reactions? Why you panic over small things? Why you self-sabotage when everything seems to be going well? It's not bad luck. It's not weakness. It's the shadow trying to restore psychic balance. It's saying, you can't keep pretending I don't exist. And here's the cruelest part. Society reinforces your disconnection with the shadow. It rewards you for being productive, for appearing confident, for maintaining appearances. But that appearance comes at a high cost. It costs your authenticity. It costs your emotional health. It costs your peace. Jung said that no one enlightens themselves by fantasizing figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The true cure for anxiety is not in eliminating the symptoms, but in facing the truth they reveal. And that truth is brutal. You built an identity based on half of your soul, and now the other half is demanding to be heard. But how do you listen to a part of yourself that you fear? How do you dialogue with the shadow without being consumed by it? The answer lies in the body. Because before it manifests as thought, the shadow expresses itself as sensation, anxiety, tension, physical pain. Your body is carrying the conflict that your mind insists on denying. In the next section, we will understand why anxiety is not just in your head, but in your body, and how it has become the battleground between who you are and who you are trying to be. Your anxiety does not only live in the mind, it lodges in the body, in the contracted muscles that you no longer even notice, in the stomach that tightens for no reason, in the chest that burns as if something is about to explode, in the knot in the throat that prevents you from saying what you feel. These symptoms are not just physical, they are psychic. They are manifestations of the internal conflict between the ego that wants control and the soul that wants liberation. Jung believed that the body is the mirror of the unconscious. When repressed content does not find a symbolic outlet, such as dreams, art, writing, or inner dialogue, it manifests in a literal, raw, somatic way. And anxiety is one of the most intense forms of this manifestation. It is the collapse of the language of the soul that, ignored for too long, has begun to scream through the flesh. How many times have you felt your body react as if it were in danger, even knowing rationally that everything was fine? This is the unconscious trying to take command because your consciousness is no longer listening. The nervous system goes into a state of maximum alert, as if a predator was stalking you, but the predator is not outside, it is inside. It is the repressed content of your psyche that has become so unbearable that it now expresses itself in the form of physical urgency. That is why superficial techniques rarely work. Deep breathing, taking a cold shower, trying to think positive may bring momentary relief. But it does not solve the problem, because it is not the body that is broken, it is the connection between body and soul that has been severed. Anxiety is the body trying to compensate for a soul that has been silenced. Jung understood that the body is symbolic. It is the stage where the deepest dramas of the psyche are played out. An anxious body is a body that carries secrets, emotions that have never been expressed, traumas that have never been named, needs that have never been named, needs that have never been heard. And each symptom is a desperate attempt by the unconscious to bring to light what needs to be integrated. You live exhausted, not only because your routine is heavy, but because your soul is waging a subterranean war, and this war has a price: chronic tensionic tension, insomnia, diffuse pain, a constant sense of threat. Your body is pleading for reconnection, for listening, for truth. But how do you transform this body into an ally instead of seeing it as an enemy? How do you move from a logic of combat, trying to control the symptoms, to a logic of listening and integration? In the next section, we will explore the true antidote to this anguish: the journey of individuation, a profound path proposed by Jung, where anxiety ceases to be a burden and becomes a compass. You are not here to survive. You are here to become who you really are. But the problem is that no one taught you how to do that. From an early age, you were shaped to fit into patterns, into expectations, into norms. You learn to adapt, to be accepted, to stay silent, to avoid conflicts, to follow rules whose authors you don't even know. And in the process, you forgot who you were. You lost your center, and it is exactly there that anxiety is born, in the space between your authentic self and the self manufactured to please. Your authentic self and the self manufactured to please. Carl Jung called the path back to oneself the journey of individuation. And don't be mistaken, this has nothing to do with selfishness or superficial self-assertion. Individuation is a deep, sometimes brutal process of reconnecting with everything you have rejected in yourself. It is the rescue of your wholeness, and it is this rescue that begins to dissolve anxiety, not as a symptom to be fought, but as an alert that has finally been heard. To individuate is to accept that there are parts of you that have been forgotten, wounded, silenced, and that they are begging to return. It is to face the shadow, to recognize the masks of the persona, to understand the archetypes that influence your most intimate decisions. It is to stop asking yourself, "How should I be?" and start asking yourself, "Who am I really?" But don't think this path is easy. It is a descent, a confrontation with old fears, painful truths, unresolved choices. It is to strip away the idealized image you have built and face the fragmented being that was left behind. Anxiety in this context is not the enemy, it is the guide. It points to the areas where you are still living half-heartedly, where you are still pretending, where you are still afraid to be who you are. Jung said that healing happens when the individual becomes who they are. This means abandoning the desire to please, to control, to meet external expectations. It means making peace with your history, with your traumas, with your light and your darkness. It means integrating, not excluding. And in doing so, something profound happens. Anxiety begins to dissolve, not because you have defeated it, but because you have finally understood what it wanted to say. It was not a problem. It was a map, a call, a push from the soul saying, "Wake up, come home, be whole." But the question now is, how to do this in practice? How to get out of autopilot and start this journey in a real way? How to transform suffering into symbol? How to communicate with the unconscious without being swallowed by it? In the next section, we will explore the tools that Jung left for this reconnection. Symbolic rituals, silence, dreams, and the power of solitude. Forgotten tools in a world that only knows how to rush, but which may be the key to your inner freedom. You have been conditioned to seek quick solutions. be the key to your inner freedom. You have been conditioned to seek quick solutions, a pill to sleep, a motivational podcast, a 5-minute video with 5 tips to control anxiety. But here's a truth that might hurt. There is no instant cure for suffering that took years to form. What exists is a process. And this process begins when you quiet down, listen to yourself, and accept to dive into the invisible. Jung did not see the human being as a machine that needs fixing, but as a fragmented soul that needs integration. And for that, 3 practices are indispensable: silence, symbolism, and solitude. In the noisy world we live in, silence has become a luxury. But for Jung, silence was the beginning of dialogue with the unconscious. While you distract yourself with external noises, notifications, obligations, others' opinions, 2 of dialogue with the unconscious. While you distract yourself with external noises, notifications, obligations, others' opinions, the most important voice of all remains muffled. Your silence is not empty. It is a portal. It is in silence that repressed contents emerge, that symbols take shape, that dreams regain meaning. Silence is the language of the soul, and it is in this silent space that symbolism comes in. Jung asserted that the unconscious communicates through symbols, images that carry deep meanings, often incomprehensible to rational logic. Have you ever had a disturbing dream and woken up not knowing what it meant? Have you ever felt a strange connection to a song, an image, or an apparently trivial memory? These are symbols, and they do not appear by chance. They are keys, fragments of your soul trying to say, "Hey, I'm here, recognize me." Interpreting these symbols is an act of psychic alchemy. You need to learn to see what lies beneath the surface. A dream of falling may be a warning of loss of control. A constant feeling of weight on your shoulders may symbolize responsibilities that are not yours. Anxiety, in fact, is itself a symbol, a sign that there is a rupture between what you live and who you are. But none of this can be accessed without solitude. And pay attention. Solitude is not isolation. Isolation is escape. Solitude is not isolation. Isolation is escape. Solitude is presence. It is the sacred space where you can finally stop acting and start listening. Jung saw solitude as a necessary ritual for transformation. It is in solitude that the ego loses the illusion of control, and the self begins to manifest. It is in solitude that dreams are revealed, symbols are organized, and internal chaos finds meaning. Silence, symbolism, and solitude. These are the tools of the true alchemist of the soul. And if you really want to break the cycle of anxiety, you need to stop seeking answers outside and start listening to what is emerging from within. But understanding all this is still not enough. Because now comes the hardest part: to act, to integrate, to live the change. And for that, you will have to make an uncomfortable choice between continuing to pretend that everything is fine or finally taking responsibility for your own transformation. In the next and final section, we will reach the end point of this journey, the decisive moment when you look at your anxiety and understand that it was never the villain of your story. It was your teacher, and now it is up to you to decide, will you continue to run away or will you finally face the truth? It's time to stop deceiving yourself, to look at your anxiety not as an unfair burden, but as a brutal mirror that life has placed in front of you. Everything you have felt up to this point, the tightness in your chest, the silent anguish, the feeling of about to crumble, were not failures. They were signs. Internal screams begging for reconnection, for wholeness, for truth. You have spent your life trying to fit in, trying to be enough, trying to look good, but anxiety doesn't want you to look good. It wants you to be. It didn't arise to destroy you. It emerged because something inside you was already broken and needed to be rebuilt, and that process hurts. It hurts because it requires detachment. It demands the renunciation of masks, of roles, of old versions of yourself that you carried just to survive. But you didn't come here to survive. You came to live deeply, to become what you always were, before the world shaped you with fear and conditioning. And that's exactly why Jung said, what you resist persists, what you accept transforms. Anxiety is persistent because you are still resisting your truth, your shadow, your legitimate pain. But the turning point is this. When you choose to accept the call of your soul instead of continuing to flee from discomfort, now the choice is before you. You can continue seeking distractions, fleeing from yourself, numbing yourself with temporary solutions, or you can for the first time stop, breathe deeply, and begin the real process. Deep, symbolic, transformative. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary, because your soul is already tired of living half-heartedly. If this video touched something within you, I want you to write a simple sentence in the comments. I choose to look within. It's not just a sentence, it's a commitment, a pact with yourself. And more than that, share your experience. Your voice can be the mirror that someone needs to awaken. And if you've made it this far, don't stop now. The next video is also part of this journey. And trust me, it's important. Because transformation doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens when you keep going, even when everything in you wants to give up. So click on the next video. The journey is just beginning.